I know it isn't an overdressed video, but we need to do this.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another set review, and it has been a hot minute since the last time that we did one of these videos, but at the same time this is going to be a very special variant of a set review because instead of doing one clan per video, I decided to do all the cards of all the clans in one video for Clan Selection Plus Vol.1. And the reason why we're doing it this way is because I have a whole lot of videos that I want to do before the first cards get here from Overdress. So before the actual starter decks are released. So to mitigate the amount of time that I need to do release videos, I'm doing this in one particular video. And that means today we're gonna go over Clan Selection Plus Vol.1 and tomorrow we're gonna cover Clan Selection Plus Vol.2. So a lot to talk about. And to not make this video 4+ hours, I'm gonna go over these cards very fast. So I'm gonna do it rapid fire for every single card and probably maybe 1 or 2 sentences about every single card. Some cards a bit more, but probably the reprints, gonna fly through them. The grade 1s and the grade 2 support cards probably gonna say something very snappy about them. And mainly the grade 3 is gonna give them a bit more in-depth analysis about them. But if you want a bit more information, I will leave a link in the comment section down below for each and every single clan for their respective Cardfight update video once those cards were released. Because my opinion at the time is basically the same or somewhat similar to now, as we got all the cards released or revealed right on the same day, so the opinion is basically complete during that time. But if you want a bit more information, then don't worry, I will get to that once I'm gonna feature every single separate deck spotlights for these cards, and I give the complete package about those strategies, about the cards, about everything. This video is basically more of an overview of the entire set of all the cards, and to give a good listening to if you maybe missed something or you didn't know about certain cards or certain interactions. So see this more as a podcast type of video where I'm just gonna talk, and at the same time I'm gonna do it a bit snappy to not make this video too long for what it is. And of course, if any of these cards from Clan Selection Plus Vol.1 or maybe even 2 interest you and you want to get your hands onto them, then definitely check out Parkage for some awesome deals, and of course use the code TIMELEAP5 to get 5% off on your order for even more good deals. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the first clan, as the first clan that we're going to tackle is none other than Angel Feathers, and the first card that we're going to look at is their draw PG, which is Battle Cupid Nokiel, and this is of course a 5-star card. I don't have to explain why. They're draw PGs. Now for the second card that we got for Angel Feathers is Helpful Intendant, and this has the ability, although when rode upon cost, put this card into your damage zone face down and call a card from your damage zone to the rearguard circle. And it has the abilities, continues the rearguard circle. If a new card was put into your opponent's damage zone this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k. So a 13k attack or a booster, and it can put itself onto the field or maybe another card in the early game. For me, this is going to be a 3-star reprint, as it's not the most amazing type of card, but it's a nice generic card that any Angel Feather player can utilize and probably can use in some kind of strategy because it's super generic. Then for the third reprint card, we've got Bellyful Met's Angel, and this grade 1 has the ability, act on rearguard circle, cost, put this unit into your soul, and swap a unit card from your hand with a card from your damage zone. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. For me, this is going to be a solid 4-star card because this is a promo card which we never got our hands on in the first place, so that's already really nice. But it's also a really good card. It gives you Soul, which is one of the most used resources in Angel Feathers, and it has a skill that allows you to just swap cards that isn't restricted in some kind of capacity. So it's a really good card that can also substitute as a counter charger. So yeah, there's no reason not to play it, and it's a good key card for any type of very strong engine. So Angel Feather players will probably be very happy with this promo finally coming to the English side. Now for the final reprint, they've got the grade 2 Adroit Zion, which has the abilities continuous on Vanguard and rearguard circle. During your turn, if a new card was put into your opponent's damage zone this turn, this unit gets power plus 10k. So it can be a solid 19k attacker, or maybe even stronger with a booster or protect marker that's underneath the circle. And it has the ability, auto rearguard circle, when it attacks a Vanguard, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and you may put it into your damage zone. If you do, your opponent heals a card from his or her damage zone, and at the end of the battle, retire this unit. So you could potentially sacrifice this card to use it as a pinpoint removal that could potentially give your opponent counter charger, but at the same time, it does fulfill the condition to turn itself into a 19k beater. So it's a self-fulfilling unit, which is already really nice. And it's going to have some inherent synergy with the new Megacolony Malek. So overall for me, this is going to be a 3-star reprint, as I don't think this card was all too expensive, and it's not that old of a triple R, so it's a nice reprint, but I'm not so sure if it's that much needed for Angel Feather players. But if it is, then yeah, that's a good thing. Now, if we get into the new cards, we've got the new Grade 1, which is Persistent Angel, which has the ability act on Regular Circle once a turn, cost Soul Blast 1, draw a card, discard a card from your hand, and put up to 1 card with Megacolony Malek in its card name from a drop zone to the top of your deck. So once again, Angel Feather cards gets a cycle effect that costs you resources. I don't know why Angel Feathers just can get a free cycle effect, but here we are again, it costs you a Soul Blast for a cycle. That is not good. The only upside to this card is that it allows you to put a Megacolony Malek on top of your deck, which we're going to see in a second, which allows you to enable for some combo plays. So only for that fact, I'm giving this card a 3-star rating. If it wasn't for that potential, this card was an obvious 1-star in my opinion. The fact that it allows you to put the top of your deck allows you to do some plays, and you're gonna see that in a moment here. Now, for the Grade 2, we've got Holy Road Angel, which has the ability Auto Vanguard the Regular Circle. When placed, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal to 1 card with Megacolony Malek in its card name from among them, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. Reveal to 1 normal unit from your hand and put it on the top of your deck. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. So this is a top 7 searcher that searches for either Grade 3 Megacolony Maleks, the new one and the old one, which is really nice because that increases the consistency of getting that free plus. And then on top of that, you could put a normal unit back on the top of your deck. In most cases, you don't want to do this because it isn't a trigger and it negates the free plus. But if you have the new Megacolony Malek in your hand, you definitely want to do this to set up for your combo play. So that's a really nice synergistic option that you have. So either it's a right consistency boost, or it's a plus engine, or it can set up for your combo potential. So for that aspect, this is a solid 4-star card because it's also free. It doesn't cost you resources, which is really, really nice. Now, for the main Grade 3, we've got Sevalef Aether Shin Megacolony Malek. And Shin Megacolony Malek has the abilities Auto, when revealed by a damage check, if your Vanguard is Arc Aether Megacolony Malek, cost discard a card from your hand and write this card as stand. So this is what I refer to with the Grade 1 and Grade 2 that you can set up for your plays. You want to use those cards to put this card on the top of your deck, then use some of your effects that gives yourself a damage to then immediately damage check this card and then write it into your Vanguard circle. Important thing to note here is that it negates that particular damage, so you don't redo the damage. So it's basically heals to some extent. And if you combine this with the old Megacolony Malek, that means you can use the old Megacolony Malek to Soul Blast a card, to Superior call multiple cards to the field, then damage check this new card, immediately Superior write it, and you don't take the damage. So suddenly the old Megacolony Malek actually can actively heal you cards while also Superior writing, giving you even more soul, generating more protect markers as you gain 2 protect markers a turn while building a field. But it doesn't stop there, as this card also has the effect Continuous Vanguard Circle. During a turn, if you have 2 or more protect markers on your circles, all of your front row units get power plus 10k. So again, once you activate this skill, you will have 2 protect markers if you went for protect 2, so also an extra power buff to the field. And the old Megacolony Malek already gave 5k power, so it's even more power to the field. Then it also has the third ability, and this is the final creme de la creme on this everything, is Continuous Vanguard Circle. All of your units on the rearguard circle with protect marker cannot be retired by any player's card effect. So you get field protection, which is really, really good. But on top of that, this synergizes with your 8 Roid units, the Grade 2 and the Grade 1, because they sacrifice themselves to gain strong abilities. Now they no longer sacrifice themselves because they stay on the field thanks to this Megacolony Malek. So you have all these synergies between the new support cards, the old 8 Roiders, even Sexier Angel, Amputation Angel, and the fact that you can Superior write this card and then gain more protect markers. This also has some synergistic plays with the rescue check cards from Gavriel, so you have even more options with them. So this Megacolony Malek deck looks pretty sweet, has a lot of options, and can do some intricate plays. So for that, this is a solid 5-star card in my book. Now, with that said, we go to the second clan, which is Shadow Paladin. And for Shadow Paladin, of course, the first card is the Draw PG, which is Dark Shield Maclear, which is an obvious 5-star card in my book. Then for the second reprint, it's Skull Witch in the main, which has the ability Act on the Rearguard Circle, cost rest this unit, search your deck for up to 1 power 5k card, call to Noble Irregular Circle and shuffle your deck. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. I probably don't have to explain why this card is an obvious 5-star reprint. This card enables the entire 5k engine, and it's a mainstay in every Shadow Paladin deck. So yeah, this is great to have this as a reprint and finally make the card accessible for everybody once again. Now for the third reprint, we've got Dead Armor Dragon, which is the ability Auto Irregular Circle. When your unit attacks, cost Soul+1 and retire this unit. And until the end of the battle, when your opponent would call cards from his or her hand to the Guardian Circle, he or she must call 2 or more at the same time. So it's basically a Battle Door effect that you can give to any attack that you want. For me, it's fine. It's gonna be a 2-star. Like, it's a tech card that could or cannot be used. I'm not too crazy about it, but it's a fine reprint nonetheless if you want to use it. Then for the final promo for Shadow Paladin, we've got this grade 1 Black Sage Charon, which is the ability Auto Irregular Circle. When placed due to the ability of your card, cost Soul+1, Countercharge 1, and this unit gets power plus 3k until the end of turn. So this is a solid 4-star card, as it's a very generic card for Shadow Paladin, and it was quite expensive. Now, not every deck or playstyle utilizes this card, so that's why I'm not giving it a 5-star rating, but it's a really nice reprint nonetheless, and makes a lot of budget decks for Shadow Paladin finally possible, as they were reliant on a card like this. Now, if we go into the main core cards for Shadow Paladin, the new cards, we see this grade 1 Cold-Blooded Witch Luba, and it has the ability Auto Irregular Circle. This ability cost is reduced by a count of +1 for each of your opponent's grade 0 rearguards. When placed, cost count of +2, put a grade 2 or greater normal unit from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck and draw a card. This is for me a 2-star card for a couple of reasons. The most important thing is that this is basically a draw engine, and it allows you to shuffle back the grade 2 Witch back into the deck so you have consistent access to it. The issue is, however, it's way too overcosted for what it does, and it's a late game ability. You cannot use this in the early game because you either don't have the counterblast, or it does cost 0 counterblast, but you don't have the grade 2 in your drop to even activate the ability. So it's a late game draw engine, but you usually want to draw cards in the early game to increase the consistency of your plays. So it's very counterintuitive what it actually wants to do, and therefore it's not a great card. So for that, it's definitely a bad card, because it's also very restrictive to only the Witch playstyle and not generic Shadow Paladin. So for me, obvious 2-star, because it's not great in my opinion. Now, if we go to the grade 2 for witches, we have Witch of Reality Femme, and she has the ability Act on Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, cost Soul+1. Your opponent chooses 2 grade 0 unit cards from his or her drop zone and calls them to his or her rearguard circle with grade 1 or greater units. If no cards were called, this unit gets drive +1 until the end of turn. Now this is for me, again, a 2-star card. It's not good. Like, the problem that I have with this card is that on surface it looks like a cheaper Blaster Dart, because you can get the drive check without discarding and without playing Counterblast. But the problem is, your opponent can play around this very easily. They just have to have 1 rearguard in the field and put 1 trigger into the drop zone, or 1 grade 0, maybe even Soul Blaster starter, and you deny them the drive check, and you even deny them good value. Because if you just have a grade 1 onto the field with an unplays effect, you don't mind losing it, because it already did what it is supposed to do. And you go from maybe an 8k unit to a 5k unit, and that's not really a lot of loss in power. While you just denied your opponent a twin drive on grade 2, while they still need to waste a Soul Blast to do so. So that already shows you how effectively bad this card is if you analyze what this card could do. So for me, that's definitely a 2-star card. Now, if we go to the main grade 3 for the Witches playstyle, we have Mesmerizing Witch Viana. And Viana has abilities Act on Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, cost counter +1 and retire 2 rearguards. Search your hand or deck for up to 1 Witch of Reality Femme. Call to the front rearguard circle, and if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. The circle that called unit is on becomes a Vanguard circle until the end of turn. So this is basically a Ganslot type of effect, but then for witches, and it basically allows you to break even. It costs you 2 rearguards, but you get 1 from deck if you are able to call it from deck, and you get 1 card from the drive check of the rearguard. So that's a 2 for 2 break even. It only costs you that counterblast, but you can say that counterblast breaks even for the extra pressure of that second Vanguard attack, which is fine. Now, you could combine this with the grade 2 that then use its skill to potentially disrupt your opponent's field, and then potentially gets twin drives, so then it's a +1. Yes, that would be great. But the issue is, once again, your opponent can play around it, and even if they weren't able to call any new triggers to the field, that means your attack won't do anything, because they're just 13k and 10k. Because Fiana's second ability is Continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, all of your Vanguards get power plus 5k for each of your opponent's grade 0 rearguards. So that tells you want to put zeros onto the board to gain power. But to plus of her first effect with the Twin Drive, you actually don't want to call grade 0. So it plays against each other, and again, your opponent can utilize the same tactic for the grade 2 counterplay to just only have one unit onto the field or only 1 0 in drop zone, and that means your opponent doesn't gain a Twin Drive, but also only gains 5k power onto the board for their 2 attacks. That's pretty bad. So for me, that's gonna be a 3-star rating for this particular card, because I don't think the weakness of the Witch deck default lies in this card. I don't think that's the case. This card is fine for what it is. My issue is that the grade 2 is an on-place once per turn effect, and that the grade 1 also doesn't allow you to put grade 0s onto the board. If they get more support, it allows you to put grade 0s onto the board, or at the very least allows you to thin your opponent's deck like they did in the old era, where you can actively take triggers from their deck. Then it was a whole different story, but sadly that's not the case, so Witches is kind of underwhelming, but I think this card is fine as a 3-star card. Now if we go to the third clan, then we get to Gold Paladin, which of course has Halo Shield Mark as the third reprint, which is a RPG, and it's obviously a 5-star card. Now for their second reprint card, they have the grade 1 Listener of Truth Twin Drain, which has the ability Auto Rigid Circle. When placed by a card's ability, cost Soul +1 and draw a card, or Countercharge 1 and this unit gets power plus 3k until the end of turn. This is an incredibly powerful card, but as a reprint, I will only give it a 2-star, and the reason for that is that it was a low rarity card that's pretty accessible. It's not that expensive, at least that I can remember, so it's not that effective as a reprint. Then again, if it was getting more expensive, it's now very accessible and very easy to get, so it's at least great that we have it once again. Now for the third reprint, we have Stronghold of the Black Chains Hoel, which is the ability Continuous Rigid Circle. Your other unit in the same column as this unit that was placed this turn gets power plus 5k. If Advance of the Black Chains Kahedin is on your Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, it gets power plus 10k instead of plus 5k. So this is for me a 3-star reprint because it's a fine card, it was a high rarity card, but it's not that amazing in every build. It's generically good because it allows you to give passive power increase to multiple units. So if you can keep recalling the same units in front of this card, you power up multiple attacks. Or it can be the booster behind your Vanguard, and if you have a rewrite Vanguard or a restanding Vanguard, both those attacks gain the additional power increase. So it has its synergies, but it wasn't that generically good in every type of aspect of Gold Paladin. But again, great to have it once here again. Then for the final reprint for Gold Paladin, we have Advance of the Black Chains Kahedin, the second part of the duo, which has the skill Auto Rigid Circle. When placed, cost Counter +1 and discard a card from your hand. Look at the 3 cards from the top of your deck, call up the 1 card from among them to the Rearguard Circle, shuffle your deck, and if Stronghold of the Black Chains Hoel is on your Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, draw a card. Now this for me is a 4-star reprint because it's once again one of those grade 2s that allows you to superior call cards to the field. It's also very good because it can synergize with combo plays, as it is just when placed and not when placed from hand, so you have options. And it's one of those cards that allow you to potentially plus very easily and cheaply because it only costs a counterblast instead of potentially a discard or a counterblast and soulless and that kind of stuff. So it's a very good card, which also makes Hoel even better. So that's why it's a solid 4-star reprint. Now if we get into the new cards, then we see Scout of Darkness Vortimer, and it has the ability Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 Spectral Duke Dragon or Black Dragon Knight Vortimer from among them and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. It's one of those top 7 searchers, which is pretty good. And then also, although when retired from the Rearguard Circle by a card's ability cost, put this card into your soul and one of your Vanguards get power plus 5k until the end of turn. So for me, this is going to be a 3-star card, like it's generically fine. The only issue that I have with this card is that it's bound to Spectral Duke Dragon, as no other archetype within Gold Paladin can utilize either of its skills. So It's good in the deck that it's supposed to work, but it's useless in any other deck for Gold Paladin, so that restricts this card's power level in my opinion, at least. Now, if we go to the grade 2 version of Vortimer, we have Black Dragon Knight Vortimer, which has the abilities Continuous Vanguard and Rigid Circle. If you have Scout of Darkness Vortimer in your soul, this unit gets power plus 1k, so it's a 10k unit, and as soon as the grade 1 can put itself into the soul, you don't necessarily have to do the complete right chain effectively to utilize the skill, but at the very least, mid to late game, you can fix the issue if it isn't there. Then also it has the ability, although when retired from Rigid Circle by your card's ability, cost, put this unit into your soul and counter charge 1. So it is a soul charger and a counter charger, which is really good. And then also it has the ability, although when rode upon by Spectral Duke Dragon, look the 5 cards from the top of your deck, call up to 2 cards from among them to the Rigid Circle and shuffle your deck. So it's a free +2. So this card is a solid 4-star card. You might think to yourself, oh, hold on a moment, this should be 5-star. It's a count charger, soul charger, 10k attacker, so it can beat against 4s, and it gives you a free +2. Yes, but just like the grade 1, it's completely useless in any other Gold Paladin deck except for Spectral Duke Dragon. Sadly, Spectral Duke Dragon isn't as good as you think, so that kind of sucks, and this grade 2 is really good, and it makes the deck a lot better, but sadly it's too restricted to that particular playstyle. So that said, let's take a look at Spectral Duke Dragon. So here we have the main grade 3 for Gold Paladin, and its abilities are Continuous Vanguard Circle. If you have Black Dragon Knight Vortimer in your soul, this unit gets power plus 1k, so it's a 13k attacker, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets critical plus 1. So it can become a force grade 3 that can swing with criticals every single turn, which is really good. And again, just like the grade 1 and the grade 2, we can put the grade 2 into the soul, so if we miss the right chain, we can fix it, so that's not a complete problem with the power increase. Now, for its second ability, we have Auto and Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, at the end of the battle it attacked, cost, counter plus 1, and retire 3 rear guards. Stand this unit, and it gets drive -1 until the end of the turn. If your damage zone has 4 or more cards, it gets drive plus 1 instead of drive -1. So either you attack with twin drive single drive, or you attack with twin drive triple drive, which is really good, especially with the fact that this ability costs 3 rear guards. If you have the triple drive, you break even. If you don't, it's a -2 for the restand, but keep in mind, it has the inherent critical, so you swing twice with the double critical, so there is some pressure behind the attacks. Now, if we combine it with the grade 1 and grade 2, we see the synergies here, because if we retire them, they put themselves into the soul, thus fixing the soul issue, but the grade 2 also gives you counter charge, which then refunds the counter blast, and grade 1 gives more power to the second attack, so there's more potential there. But even with that, it's still a 3-star card in my book, because it's a weak restander. It's just 13k, and then again 13k unless you have the grade 1 or triggers, or maybe Howell, so you're dependent on your key pieces to make this attack good. But it's still way too costly in rearguard department, because you're stacking 3 units every single turn. If your opponent is just keeping you at 3 damage, it doesn't really do anything. And this is where the grade 2 becomes oh so important, because if you write the grade 2 and then the grade 3 on top of that, at the very least, you get those free 2 units for the first restand, thus making the first restand equal out in resources, so you don't lose out on resources on the first restand. But after that, your opponent can stall the game out and keep you at 3 damage, and you start to waste resources turn after turn after turn, which you cannot keep up at some point. So there are definitely some inherent issues here, and it's also not that super splashable like with other playstyles. So for that, it's going to be a 3-star card for me on this one. Now for the 4th clan, we've got Tachikaze, and the first card that we're going to talk about is the Drop G, which is Arc Birth. And it's Drop G, so it's 5 stars. Now, if we go to the second reprint, they've got the promo reprint of the Grade 1 Savage Trooper, which has the ability Continuous Rigid Circle. For every card in this unit's equipped gauge, it gets power plus 5k. Now, for me, this is a solid 3-star reprint, as it is an amazing card. It's very powerful and it's very generic. but it's kind of outdated to some extent. Like Tachikaze is getting more and more better generic grade 1, so this card might not be as useful for every deck like it was back in the day, but still a very nice reprint nonetheless. Now as for the grade 2 reprints, we've got Clear Out Dragon Super Aqua Kanto, which has the abilities continues a rearguard circle once a turn. When it attacks a Vanguard, put the top card of your deck face down as an equip gauge for this unit, and it has the ability continues a rearguard circle. This unit gets power plus 5k for each of this unit's equip gauge, and if it has 3 or more equip gauges, it cannot be chosen by your opponent's card abilities. This is a solid 4-star reprint for me. It's an amazing powerful card. It's super generic. It might not be for every Tachikaze build out there, but it's really good. But it's also not that old of a card, so that's why I think it's solid 4-star card for what it is right now. Now as for the 4th reprint, we've got another grade 2, which is Ravenous Dragon Mega Rex. And it has the ability Auto and Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, cost retire another rearguard and draw a card. If this unit is on a rearguard circle, cost counter plus 1. Put the top card of your deck face down as an equip gauge for this unit, and it gets power plus 5 until the end of that battle for each gauge equipped to this unit. Once again, it is a solid 4-star card. This is again one of those grade 2s which is super generic and very good for Tachikaze, and it's one of those combo starters, extenders that you see a lot in those very powerful Tachikaze decks. So having this as a reprint is really solid, especially since this was one of the very first cards for Tachikaze back at the beginning of the reboot. Now, if we go to the new cards for Tachikaze, we start off with the grade 1, which is Savage Shooter. And this grade 1 has the abilities Auto Vanguard Circle, when placed, cost Soul plus 1, draw a card, and call a card from your hand to the rearguard circle. Put the top card of your deck face down as an equip gauge for the called unit. So this allows you to immediately call a card to the field and equip a gauge to it. This allows you to superior call grade 2s and grade 3s. So you could potentially superior call a Super Aqua Kanto, give it a gauge, maybe multiple gauge, and have a potentially full power ready Super Aqua Kanto on your very first turn. Yeah, that sounds ridiculous enough, but that's just a starter because this card also has the ability act on rearguard circle, cost rest this unit, and put a card from your drop zone face down as an equip gauge for one of your rearguards without any equip gauges. So Tachikaze now finally has a card that allows you to put specific gauges underneath your unit, and from the drop zone nonetheless. So now you have full control over which cards are going to be equipped where. And this is really good, especially in combination with cards like Bluesprint and Regiment Dragon Regiodon, which allows you to use those gauges to multi-attack. So this card is incredibly good, and it's solid 5-star card for that. It's a super good early aggressive tool if you ride it, but as a rearguard might even be better because it can set up your multi-tech engine, which is even more stronger than you think when we look at the following grade 2. And that grade 2 being Extortion Dragon Spinal Extort. And this grade 2 has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, cost counter plus 1 and retire another rearguard. Draw a card and call to one of the equipped gauges from the unit retired for this cost to the rearguard circle. Put the top card of your deck face down as an equipped gauge for that called unit. So, as I just explained, where the grade 1 can help you increase the consistency of cards like Bluesprint Dragon and Regiment Dragon and Regiodon, this grade 2 turns every card into a Bluesprint or into a Regiment Dragon Regiodon, so you have even more consistent access to your multi-tech engine. And interesting enough, this grade 2 can turn those Bluesprint and Regiment Dragons into double Bluesprint and double Regiment Dragons, so there's even more consistent access to your multi-tech plays. So this, combined with all those cards and even Gaia to give all those units extra power, because every time you superior call those units, they immediately get gauges, so they gain the power buff of Gaia. You have a really strong multi-tech engine on your hands. So this is a solid 5-star card for me. There's no questions around that because this card is insanely good. And it's also very generic. Now, if we go to the main grade 3, the new boss unit of this set for Tachikaze, we can see Light Battle Dragon Gigano Blazer. And this card isn't that flashy, but it's a really nice generic support card for the clan, because its abilities are continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if 3 or more new equipped gauges were put for your units this turn, all of your front row units get power plus 5k. So it's somewhat similar to a Gaia-esque, a Vanquisher way to power up your field, but not as powerful or consistent. But then it also has the ability Act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost counter plus 1 and soul plus 1, draw 2 cards and call 2 cards from your hand to the rearguard circle. Put up to 1 card from the top of your deck face down as equip gauges for each of those units. So this basically allows you to accumulate more advantage, as if you didn't have a field, you can use the ability to draw 2 cards and then call a couple of cards, which you probably would call anyways to do some offensive plays. So this is basically a going first right target instead of going into Gaia, because Gaia isn't at full power at that moment. So this is a nice support card for the Gaia playstyle to not sacrifice potentially your entire resource to blow out your entire play to then immediately walk into a defensive trigger. This is a great way to set up your field and do your entire thing. So for that, I think it's a solid 4-star card support card that might even see play in future builds, as it's just a good way to gain value in the early turns. Now, it's not flashy, it's not super powerful, but it's just value, and value is nothing to laugh at all, as value can definitely win you the games if utilized correctly. Now, if we go into the 5th clan, we enter Murakumo, and for Murakumo, we of course start with the Draw PG, which is none other than Stealth Beast Leaves Mirage, which again is a 5-star card. We don't have to talk about this once again. Now, let's dive into the Shiryuki support, because first off, for the reprints, we have Stealth Fiend Rainy Madame, which has the ability auto rearguard circle. When your unit's attack does not hit, put this unit into your soul and return a Fantasy Petal Storm Shiryuki from the drop zone to your hand. Now, as a reprint, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of bad. It's a 2-star because it was a rare and there's plenty in circulation. I don't really see the need of actually reprinting this card, but it's a good card nonetheless. Now, same story if we go over the 3rd reprint, because then we see Stealth Fiend Yagatsu Girl, which has the ability auto rearguard circle. When its attack does not hit, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal the 2 Fantasy Petal Storm Shiryuki from among them, put 1 into your hand, put 1 into your drop zone, shuffle your deck, and if you did not reveal any cards, soul charge 1. Again, this was a rare, there's no need to reprint this. It's still very good, especially with the new Shiryuki support, so it's obvious why they did this, but there were probably better options out there. But again, so for that, it's a 2-star reprint for me. It's not to say anything about the power level of the card. I'm talking about the reprint value of this particular card. Now for the final and 4th reprint for Murakumo, we can see Abrupt Stealth Rogue Ario, and it has the abilities auto Vanguard circle. When placed, cost counter +1, search your deck for up to 1 card with the same card name as one of your units, call to the rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. So it's a +1 and it can search out itself, which you probably want to do in the early game because of its other ability, which is continuous the rearguard circle. During a turn, if you have another unit with the same card name as this unit gets power +10k, so it's a 19k attacker. So if you write him and you copy himself, you create a 90k attacker on the board, which can potentially hit over defensive trigger if you went first or you're not up against a forced clan. So that's really good. And this, for that, is a solid 5-star card because this was a Japanese promo exclusive and it's not finally to the TCG, and this is so important for the Yasube deck and to some extent can even help the Shiryuki deck as well. So this is a really good Murakumo card that we finally have in the English format. Now, if we go over the new Shiryuki support, we start to look at the Grade 1, which is Apprentice Yokai Sasameyuki. And Sasameyuki has the ability Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, look at the 7 cards from top of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with Shiryuki in its card name from among them, put them in your hand and shuffle your deck. Now, we have 8 targets because we have 2 Shiryuki cards, so it's those generic top 7 searchers that has 2 valid targets. Nothing special, but good. And then it also has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle. Once a turn, when your Vanguard with Shiryuki in its card name is placed, you may soul charge 1. So this is in the similar ballpark as the Gold Paladin Vortimer Grade 1, that it is good for the Shiryuki deck, but it's not that great outside of it because it's very restricted and bound to that playstyle. Now Shiryuki can be splashed in other decks, but I don't think you're gonna splash it with this Grade 1 as you already have the Rainy Madame, which is infinitely better. So for that, I think it's an okay 3-star card as it's really nice for the specific playstyle. Now, if we go to the Grade 2, we can see Ice Fang Princess Tsurarahime. And Tsurarahime has the abilities Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, you may call a card with Shiryuki in its card name from your hand to the rearguard circle. If you call the card, at the end of that turn, return the rearguard called with this effect to your hand. And if you have 1 or less cards in your soul charge 1. So basically what this effect wants you to do is write it, Superior call the old Shiryuki, use its Soul Blast 2 effect to minus your opponent's Vanguard with 5k power, and at the end of the turn, bounce back and gain 1 soul, because you're at 0 soul. So effectively, for 1 soul, you have a 17k grade 3 unit onto the board, and your other columns or attacks will also gain a 5k power boost. For 1 soul, that's actually pretty decent, especially for early game aggressive tempo play. So that's nothing to scoff at. But it also has a secondary effect, which is Auto Rearguard Circle. At the end of your turn, if you have a Vanguard with Shiryuki in its card name cost, put this unit into your soul, return 1 normal unit on the Rearguard Circle to your hand. So what this ability allows you to do is build up soul, but it also allows you to bounce back your grade 3s that are your Shiryukis back to your hand, so you can either use them for the guard step, or you can ride them next turn, or maybe use them again because Shiryukis have on-place effects, thus gaining more value out of those particular cards. So this is a excellent support card for Shiryuki. The only issue is that especially her Vanguard skill is dependent on you having a Shiryuki in your hand, and especially old Shiryuki in hand, to maximize the value of that card. So with that restrictive nature in mind, I think it's a solid 4-star card for what Shiryuki can do. Now if we go to the new Shiryuki card, we have 6 Flowers of Phantasm's Shirayuki, and she has the following effects. Continuous deck drop zone. This card is also regarded as Fantasy Petal Storm Shiryuki. This basically means it works with the old support, which makes sense. So all those cards became even better because instead of 4 targets, they now have 8. Then she also has the ability Auto and Guardian Circle. When placed, costs Soul Blast 2. Choose one of your opponent's front row units, and it gets power minus 30k until the end of that battle. So where the old Shiryuki can give 3 units minus 10k, this all channels that into 1 attack, into 1 unit, and gains minus 30k. This is really good against high beaters that have Sentinel Restrict or whatever Guard Restrict, but it's not that great against multi-tech clans or clans that can restand their units, because this power decreases only for that battle and not until the end of turn. So it's kind of restricted, but it has its uses, and if you combine it with the old Shiryuki, you basically have a very good defensive option in whatever scenario you might find yourself. But the main gimmick about this card is her third ability, which is Auto and Vanguard Rearguard Circle. Once a turn, when your unit attack does not hit, if you have a Vanguard with Shiryuki in its card name cost, Counter Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's front row units, and it gets power minus 10k until the end of turn. If this unit is on the Vanguard Circle, you may call a card with Shiryuki in its card name from your drop zone to the open Rearguard Circle. So this effect basically allows you to keep pressure up for every single attack. So either your opponent takes a damage, or they guard, and you put their Vanguard minus 10k, thus basically giving your entire front row a front trigger for 1 counterblast, which is a lot of power, especially with the Axel circles in mind. And interesting enough, it's on Vanguard Circle as well as Rearguard Circle, so if you have multiple copies of this card onto the field, if they block an attack or one attack just doesn't hit, then they could potentially go minus 20, 30, 40k power, which is kind of ridiculous. And that means it also allows you to overcome defensive triggers. But if we combine this with Rainy Madan, which can put itself into the soul, we open up Rearguard Circles, thus potentially superior calling more Shiryukis to the field, thus multi-attack in the process. And if we combine this with the old Shiryuki, we can then immediately use the on-place effect to give the opponent's Vanguard another minus 5k power, thus going even lower than they already were. So this is an amazing Vanguard unit that gives you multi-attack, decreases their opponent's power, so basically giving your entire board a massive power boost, and it's once again a very good defensive option, and it makes all your Shiryuki cards even better. There's no obvious reason then not to give this card 5-star. This card is insane. It's incredibly powerful. It makes the Shiryuki deck actually a force to reckon with, and you shouldn't underestimate the power of this engine. Now, with Shiryuki out of the way, let's go over to the 6th clan, which is none other than Narukami. And for Narukami, we start off with the Dropiji, which is of course Wyvern Guard Gold, which is of course 5 stars. Now from that we go to the first reprint, and that is the Grade 1 Rising Phoenix, which has the ability Auto and Drop Zone. When your opponent's rearguard is bound during your turn, you may call this card to the Rearguard Circle. If you do, this unit gets power plus 3k until the end of the turn. This is one of the strongest Narukami cards out there, and for that is a solid 4-star reprint. Now, this card has multiple reprint runs, but they are either promos or it's the very old RR. I'm not so sure how easily accessible this card was, but it's definitely an older RR high rarity card, and with only promo reprints, it makes it kind of annoying to get your hands on, so having this card now easily accessible is really nice, because it's basically a staple in every Narukami deck, because every Narukami deck multi-tags and binds cards, so I don't know why you wouldn't want to use this card. Now for the third reprint, we have the Grade 2 Bolt Pike Dragon, which has the ability continues to Vanguard the Irregular Circle. If your opponent's front row has 2 or more units, this unit cannot attack. It's a 12k unit and 10k shield Grade 2 that is an interceptor. So the raw stats on this card are actually pretty nice, but I don't like the restriction, as it also is a restriction on the Vanguard Circle, so if you need to ride this thing and your opponent has a rearguard, you can't attack with your Vanguard. So I don't like this card at all. Now, it's a reprint of an old promo, so it's not even more accessible, but I'm not that fan of the card, so I'll only give it 2 stars, but I know some people like the card in their deck, but I'm not one of them. Now for the final reprint for Narukami, we have Tachikaze Vermilion, and it has the ability Act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost counter +2, and this unit gets power +5k, critical +1 until the end of turn. If you have 2 or more rearguards in your opponent's front row, instead of critical +1, when this unit would attack, it battles all of the front row units in your opponent's front row. Now this, as a reprint, is a 1 star for me, because this card is completely garbage. It's really bad. The only reason why it's reprint is because the new playstyle with Vermilion needs this card. The blood needs this card in the deck, so that's why they reprinted. And they probably didn't have to, because the card is really cheap and easy to access, because nobody was using the card, because the deck was really bad. But here we are. Now, as for the new cards, we start off with the Grade 1, which is Thunder Ferret Dragon. And it has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Irregular Circle. When placed, look at the 5 cards on the top of your deck, reveal to 1 Tachikaze Vermilion, the old one, or Spark Arrow Dragon from among them, put them in your hand and shuffle your deck. And if you put a card into your hand, discard a card from your hand. I don't like this ability because it's not top 7 and it's not a plus. It's basically similar to the Grade 3 searches because it also works on the Irregular Circle, but instead of searching for any generic card, it only searches for 2 specific cards, which is kind of annoying to the extent. But it also has the generic ability, which on a Irregular Circle, when your Vanguard attack hits, this unit gets power +5 until the end of turn. So it can be a massive beater, especially with the front row attack of Vermilion, so that's the saving grace of this card. So for that, I think it's a solid 3-star card, as it works really nicely, and it's somewhat generic with the second ability in other Narukami decks that can restand their Vanguard or to some extent, so it's fine. Now, as for the Grade 2, we have Spark Arrow Dragon, which has the abilities Act on Irregular Circle. If you have a Vanguard with Kaiser in its card name, cost Soul +1 and retire this unit. Search your deck for up to 1 card with Kaiser in its card name, write it as stand, and shuffle your deck. And until the end of turn, when your opponent's rearguard would be retired, bind it instead of retiring it. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. So this is a awesome 4-star card for the deck, because it allows you to superior write your Kaisers on top of Kaiser, so you accelerate your Exo markers, but it also means that you will always secure the right Grade 3. Even if you need to write the old Kaiser, you can immediately go into the Blood thanks to this Grade 2. And what's even better is the fact that it turns your retires from the attack into actual binds, which means the entire Vermilion mechanic now can utilize the entire bind package, which it couldn't do in the past, which means it didn't have access to Rising Phoenix, which is one of those most important cards for you to have. So now, with the whole front row retire or attack mechanic, you can now utilize your multi-attack package of Rising Phoenix in the mix as well, which is really good. So this Grade 2 is basically the saving grace of that deck. Now, if we go to the main Grade 3, we see Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion the Blood, and it has the abilities Act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost counter +1, and put a card from your hand into the soul. And until the end of the turn, this unit gets power +5k and drive +1. And when it would attack, it battles all of the opponent's front row units. If you put a Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion into the soul for this cost, this unit gets power +10k and critical +1. So if you put the right Grade 3 into the soul, it gets +15k, plus a critical, and plus a drive. So that's 27k triple drive, double critical Vanguard attack that attacks the entire front row, and you can set this card up thanks to the grade 2, and with the grade 1 gaining 5k power for every rearguard that you retire, that grade 1 can get a massive power boost, especially if you up against another Axle deck. But then on top of that, we can overcharge this unit with his second effect, which is act on Vanguard Circle cost, Soul Blast 1 card with Kaiser in its card name, and this unit gets drive +1 until the end of turn. At the end of the turn, deal this unit 1 damage. So you can basically make a final turn push. If you know you're gonna lose the game, you might as well just give this card as many drive checks as you can and just try to win it off those drive checks and the extra pressure that you generate off that attack. And you can easily pay this cost very effectively, because if you use the grade 2, you already have 1 Kaiser in your soul. But if you are able to put a Kaiser with his first ability into soul, you have 2 Dragonic Kaiser Vermilions that you can Soul Blast. So you can go from a triple drive unit into a potential quintuple drive unit. But if you wait another turn, you can potentially add 3 more drive checks on top of that, because you can rewrite, then use the grade 2 to rewrite again, and potentially put another Kaiser into the soul with its main effect. So you can look at an insanely highly drive checkable Vanguard with extra massive power, front row attack, and the extra critical. Now, in overall value wise, how strong this card is, it's gonna be a 3-star. Like, it still is a Vermilion deck. It doesn't really do a lot. It's kind of flashy, and you have the multi-attack potential because you now bind those units with Rising Phoenix, and you have the inherent consistency of it all. But the fact that you must play a bad card like the old Vermilion to just make this deck work is inherently a flawed idea, because you effectively make your deck weaker to make the deck function, which is never a good sign. So for that, it's sadly only a 3-star in my opinion. Now, if we go to the 5th clan of this set, we enter Link Joker. And for Link Joker, we start of course with the Draw PG, which is Flowers in Vacuum Cosmo Reef, which of course is a 5-star card. Now, if we go to the second reprint, we can see Crunching the Leader Barrel, and it has the ability Auto and Rearguard Circle, when placed, costs Soul Blast 1, and your opponents cannot turn his or her cards face up during his or her next turn end phase. Actions such as unlock, release from the lead, and countercharge cannot be done. So for me, I don't like this card a lot. I think it's a 2-star card because it basically is a card that enables Omega Lock, which is really good in certain playstyles. It makes Omega Delete, and it prohibits your opponent to countercharge a certain instance. That countercharge thing probably will never come up. It's such a specific instance that there's not a lot of cards for your opponent that countercharge them during the end phase. That doesn't happen all that often. There are some instances, but not a lot. Now, the Omega Delete is also not really great because your opponent will undo it just by writing, so you aren't going to get a lot of value off that as well. Now, the Omega Lock is the interesting part about this card, but our lock support that we have right now doesn't really want you to do that. You much rather want to unlock those cards to actually gain value off of Chaos Breaker Dragon. So therefore, I'm not really that fan of this particular card. You can go for the Omega Lock route, but I think we need more support to actually make this card work. But at least we have this. This is an old promo, so it's nice to see it again in easy, accessible nature. Now, for the third reprint, we see Last Curse Marinelle. And Last Curse Marinelle has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle when placed from hand. If your opponent has a face down card in his or her Vanguard Circle or Bind Zone, cost counter +1, choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards, bind them face down, and if 2 cards could not be bound, countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. This was an old promo that we never got, so that's nice, but I'm not really that fan of this card, so for that I'm gonna give it 3-star, because we don't really rely on the bind mechanic all that much in most Link Joker decks as they are today, especially with the lock now. And what this effectively is either you bind 2 cards, but ideally you want to bind 1 card to gain a soul. But to do that, you need to pay the counterblast up front to gain the counterblast back, which can be awkward in certain instances. So I'm not really that fan of the card itself. You might like it or you might not. For me, it's a 3-star. Now, if we go to the final reprint, we see Blast Monk of the Thundering Foot, which has the ability Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, cost counter +1, choose 1 of your opponent's rearguards and bind it face down. If you choose a grade 2 or greater, soul charge 1. For me, this is again a kind of iffy reprint. It's going to be a 2-star because it can be used in certain decks, but it's not that widely used, and we're starting to get better and better support cards. So for me, it's a 2-star card. It also is a double R of the past, and it already got a rare reprint in the Festival Collection. So this card didn't really need another reprint in my opinion, but hey, for some people there is at least a triple R version now. Now if we get to the actual new cards, when we get for Link Joker, we see Star Vader Craven Claw, the Grade 1, which has the ability Auto and Vanguard Irregular Circle. When it attacks or the attack it boosted hits a Vanguard, look at the 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal the 1 card with Star Vader in its card name from among them, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. This is an amazing skill because it is a searcher for the entire archetype if we get more support in the future, and it can do that multiple times in a single game, so that's really, really sweet. But then we get its second ability, which is Act on Vanguard Circle. If your opponent's Vanguard is great for your greater cost, put this unit into your soul. Choose up to one of your opponent's locked cards and unlock it. If you unlock the card, choose one of your opponent's rear guards other than that unlocked unit and lock it. That's incredibly powerful because it enables you to utilize Chaos Breaker's Dragon skill offensively and proactively instead of reactively, which is really, really good. And the soul is also really, really nice. So for that, it's a solid 5-star card for me because this card is going to come up in the future if we get more Star Vader support with more clan selection sets or V collection sets as well. So really, really nice card. Then for the grade 2, we have Bisection Star Vader Zirconium, which has the abilities Auto Vanguard Irregular Circle. When placed, if you have a Vanguard with Star Vader in its card name, cost counter +1, your opponent looks at the top card of his or her deck and calls it to an open rearguard circle as a lock card. If that lock card was placed on the back row, you draw a card and this unit gets power +10k until the end of turn. So this is a lose-lose situation for your opponent. Either they give you the draw and a 10k power and they still have a card locked into the field, or they sacrifice an attack, which is also really amazing. But if we combine this with the grade 1, if they go for the back row route, you can use the grade 1 to then unlock it and immediately lock the front row and still they lose an attack. So again, it's a lose-lose situation, which is really good. But then also has the ability, continuous rearguard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard is great for your greater and he or she has a locked card, all of your Vanguard's original critical becomes 2. So more free pressure. So overall for me, this is a solid 5-star card. The first ability is insane. The fact that you can lock from the top deck means there's 0 counterplay options. And with the grade 1, there's actually 0 counterplay options because you can screw them over for no matter what decision they're gonna make. The only issue is it's kind of piece reliant. Now, if we go to the final boss unit himself, which just scores the grade 3 Star Vader Chaos, or should I say Chaos Breaker Dragon. It has the following abilities. Continues on Vanguard the rearguard circle. During your turn, if your opponent has a lock card, this unit gets power +10k. So it's a 23k beater, which is nice, and it needs that because that is basically where its force comes from, because this card doesn't have a force marker. But no worries, we also has the following abilities because we have his second effect, Act on Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, cost counter +1, your opponent gets an imaginary gift force. You choose one of your opponent's rearguards and lock it. So instead of itself getting a force marker, it gives your opponent a force marker. But then you immediately lock a unit. So if they put a force marker underneath a certain circle with a unit, you can immediately negate that marker and lock the card instead. So this is really great because now you have pinpoint lock options. So you can just lock the front rows and just negate the amount of attacks that your opponent can dish out against you, which is really good for defensive options. But then we get to the interesting part, which is its third ability, which is Auto and Vanguard Circle. When your opponent's lock card is unlocked, cost Soul +1, retire one of those unlocked units, you draw a card, your opponent removes a total of 2 markers from his or her circles or protects from his or her hand, and you get an imaginary gift force for each marker or protect removed. So you basically steal those markers, you draw a couple of cards, and you retire their units. Which is really good because this ability isn't restricted to a once per turn. So if you unlock 3 cards at the end of your opponent's turn, you basically can Soul Blast free, retire all 3, draw 3, and potentially destroy 6 markers and potentially gain 6 force markers, which is insane. And the only issue that Chaos Breaker Dragon has is that you give your opponent the force marker and they have a turn to use it, and then at the end of their turn, that's when you're gonna steal the card. So you give your opponent a potential pushing power to potentially kill you the game. And that is where the grade 1 comes into play. That grade 1 allows you to immediately gain that force marker back because you can lock the unit, then use the grade 1, put it into soul, unlock the unit and lock something else, and because you unlock the unit, you can use the ability to soul blast the card, which can be the grade 1 you just put into the soul, destroy the unit, steal the marker as well as the potential marker your opponent created themselves, and then gain a couple of force markers for yourself. Which is pretty nutty if you think about it. So, for me, this card is an obvious 5-star card. The only problem this card in the entire Star Vader package has is that that's it. They only have those 3 cards. If Star Vader is going to get more support in the future with other Clan Selection V Collection sets, you bet your ass that this is probably going to be very powerful. Because the foundation that we have right now is really good. So yeah, I'm very curious of what we're going to see in the future. Now, as for the 8th clan, we get into Dark Irregulars. And we started with the RPG, which is Mark Rabbit of Nightmare Land, which is of course a 5-star card for obvious reasons. Now, if we go to the second reprint, we can see Variant's Killer Till, which is the grade 1 with the ability act on Regular Circle once a turn, cost rest this unit and put a card from your damage zone or drop zone into your soul. If you put from your damage zone, put the top card of your deck into the damage zone face down, and if your soul has 3 Variant's Killer Till, counter charge 1 and stand this unit. This is a very important card for Dark Irregulars, and I have to give it a 4-star reprint. The reason why I give it a 4-star reprint, even though it's a rare, is from my knowledge, this was starting to get kind of expensive because it's a staple for not only standard, but also to some extent for premium. So I think this was a couple of euros for a rare, which is kind of ridiculous. So having this as a reprint is really nice to lower the price tag on Dark Irregulars decks, because this is kind of a staple for whatever build you might play. So that's really nice. Now for the third reprint, we can see a brand new promo making its way to the English side, which is Phantasma Executor. And Executor has the ability act on rearguard circle, cost retire this unit, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it, and soul charge 2. For me, this is going to be an okay 3-star card. It's basically a 1-for-1 trade, and you generate 2 soul. To some players that might sound amazing, to other players that might sound like, eh. And to me, it sounds like in the middle road a bit. Now, as for the fourth reprint, we can see another very important staple card, which is Emblem Master. And this has the abilities Continuous Rearguard Circle and Guardian Circle. If your soul has 7 or more cards, this unit gets power plus 5k and shield plus 5k. But it also has the ability Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost counter plus 1. Search your deck and drop zone for up to a total of 3 cards with the same card name as one of your units and put them into your soul. If you search your deck, shuffle your deck. Now, this is for me an obvious 5-star card because it's a RRR reprint, and this card is pretty expensive, and it's again a staple card, so it's really good to see this card once again in a reprint set. So yeah, pretty nice. Now, if we go to the new cards for Dark Irregulars, we can see Ironheart Assassin. And Ironheart Assassin has the abilities Auto Rearguard Circle. When attacked or boost, you may soul charge 1. If you soul charge and you have 3 Ironheart Assassins in your soul, counter charge 1. This is basically a yellow bolt that counter charges. Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous, so this is pretty good, but it also has another effect, which is auto. When rode upon, you may call this card to the rearguard circle. So not only is it a yellow bolt that counter charges, it's a yellow bolt that counter charges that will always enter the field even if you need to ride it, which again is really, really good. And it has some inherent synergies with Emblem Master, because if you ride Emblem Master on top of it, you can immediately get those 3 copies into the soul with Emblem Master's on place effect, which is a really nice synergy between these 2 cards. So for me, this is a solid 4-star card because it's really, really awesome and it's super generic and really good. Now, if we go to the grade 2, we can see Poisonic Abductor. And Poisonic Abductor has the ability Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost counter plus 1 and discard a card from your hand. Search your deck for up to 3 grade 2 or less normal units with the same card name. Put 2 cards from among them into your soul, call the rest to the rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. So this is a very interesting card because this is effectively a searcher for Dark Irregulars. Any grade 2, 1, or 0 unit where you have 3 copies in your deck, you're going to get access to that card onto the field. So if it's a very important combo piece or a finisher, whatever, you have access to that card thanks to this grade 2. However, the issue is the moment you accidentally draw, damage, soul charge one of those cards and you only have 2 copies left of that card in your deck, this effectively becomes a counter plus 1, discard a card to soul charge 2, and that is terrible. So this card is very situational. So for that, I'm going to give it a 3-star rating. You might find ways to use this card really effectively, but it's very, very risky in my honest opinion. Now for the main grade 3 boss unit for Dark Regulars in this set, we have Evil God Bishop Gastile. And Gastile has the ability Auto on Vanguard Circle. At the beginning of your battle phase, so that means no NOK interaction, cost, count less 1, draw a card, and your opponent chooses one of the following effects for every 5 cards in your soul. You perform the chosen effects in any order. All of your front row units gets critical +1 until the end of turn. Your opponent's Vanguard power increases or decreases to 1 until the end of turn. All of your opponent's auto abilities do not activate until the end of turn. Your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand and puts it into the damage zone face down. So this card can negate perfect arts, it can shoot your opponents to 6 damage, it can turn all your units into force 2 attacks, and it can put your opponent into basically a delete status as they only have 1 power. This card is incredibly powerful, but it's also really slow, because this card isn't really good until you at least have 15 soul, but ideally you want to get to the 20 soul. And that is where this card becomes kind of bad, because getting to that situation is kind of inconsistent and might not always come up. However, this as a finisher, as a 2-off tech choice in your Dark Regular decks, might not actually be that bad. You can use this in combination with Shaharad or whatever, and maybe even in premium to some extent, so there are definitely useful ways to utilize this card, and with even more soul charge support in the future, maybe this card becomes actually insane and broken to some extent, but for now I think it's a okay 4-star card that might become even better in the future, and that's why I want to give it a 4-star rating. Now, if we go to the 9th clan, we get to my home turf as we enter Gear Chronicle, and we start off with their draw PG, which is Steam Guard Castilla, and Castilla has of course, the 5-star rating. It's a draw PG. Now, if we go to the other reprints, we get to an amazing card, which is the great one, Steam Maiden Rebel. And this card has the ability, although when this card is discarded from your hand during your turn, costs soul +1, call this card to the Vanguard Circle, and this unit gets power +5k until the end of turn, cost, put a normal unit from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck, and draw a card. This card, without a doubt, is 5 stars. It's the card that I've been waiting for almost a year, and it's finally here. Like, I don't have to explain why this card is good. It's a cheaper version of Wacky Wacky Worker, but on top of that, it calls itself to the field. So it's a multi-attack enabler with all types of skills within Gear Chronicle. So it's really, really good. So yeah, I'm very happy with this one. Now for the third reprint, we can see Chronotooth Tiger, which has the abilities Auto on Vanguard Circle. At the beginning of your right phase, draw a card. 3+. Pretty nice. And then also, although when this card is discarded from your hand during your turn, cost counter +1, draw a card, and call this card to the Vanguard Circle as rest. So this is again an obvious 5-star card because it's a generic staple, which is incredibly expensive. So it's great to see this card reprinted in this set. Now the exact same thing can be said for the next card, as we have Steam Scour Air Cup. This card has the abilities act on Vanguard or Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, cost counter +1, and discard a card from your hand. And one of your Vanguards gets drive +1 until the end of turn. Pretty good. But it also has the ability continues in hand. When this card would be discarded, you may discard it as a grade 3. Again, this is a staple card for Gear Chronicle, which is kind of expensive, or should I say pretty expensive. So it's great that it get this reprint together with Chronotooth Tigar, which were pivotal cards for the clan. So pretty nice. But now we get to the new support, and we start with the great one, which is Lost Gear Dog 8. And it has the abilities Auto on Vanguard or Vanguard Circle. When placed from hand, cost, reveal a grade 3 or greater card from your hand, search your deck for up to 1 grade 3, review it, and put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck, and if you put a card, choose 1 or more cards with the sum of their grade being 3 or greater from your hand and discard them. And it also has the ability continues in hand. When this card would be discarded, it may be discarded as a grade 3. So this is basically a generic grade 3 Stride Fodder from the Jira. This is actually really, really good. At the beginning I was kind of hesitant about this card, as we already had Steam Breath Dragon, but the more and more I look at this card and the more I play with this card, I think that this card is better than Steam Breath Dragon because you have 100% guaranteed access to that search. As long as you have the grade 3 or higher in your hand, and the fact that we will get that card, no matter what card it is, means that we always get that Chrono Jet. It doesn't whiff like Steam Breath Dragon, but on top of that, it allows us to potentially run tech choices, tech options in our grade 3 slots that we can search out with this card, which is really nice. And the fact that it is also discarded as a grade 3 means we aren't that dependent on Smoke Gear Dragon in some instances, which is really good. And it has some inherent synergies with some cards, like the next card that we're going to talk about. But before we're going to talk about this card, I want to give this card a solid 5-star rating for the aforementioned reasons. Now, as for that grade 2 that I just hinted at, we have Steam Gunner Zeit. And Steam Gunner Zeit has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle, when placed, cost Soul Blast 1 and discard a card from your hand. Draw a card. Choose one of your opponent's rearguards with grade less than or equal to the card discarded from your hand for this cost and retire it. So this is where Lost Gear Dog 8 comes into play because it's discarded as a grade 3, meaning you can then remove a grade 2 from the field. And this also synergizes nicely with Smoke Gear Dragon, which turns every card into your hand into a grade 3. So there's that inherent synergy. But effectively, this is basically a cycle card that could allow you to spin one of your opponent's units. That won't always happen because in some instances they either have nothing on the field or you don't have the correct card to discard to do this. So it's kind of inconsistent, which I don't really like about this card. But then also has the ability, Auto Rearguard Circle, when it attacks, if you wrote a grade 4 unit this turn, soul charge 1. So it allows you to generate the soul that you might need for something like Smoky Dragon or himself, so that's pretty sweet. And it synergizes with next stage, of course, because you don't have to be on the grade 4, you just have to roll the grade 4, which is pretty nice in comparison to other cards. So for me, this one is going to be a okay 3-star card. Like, it's a fine tech choice, but I think there are better cards that you could use in your deck, as it's not that consistent like some other cards. Now, as for the main unit, which isn't a grade 3, we have Interdimensional Dragon, Time Leaper Dragon. And Time Leaper Dragon has the ability, Auto Vanguard Circle, when it attacks a Vanguard, cost, put a rearguard on the bottom of your deck, search your deck for up to one card with a grade equal to the card put on the bottom of your deck for this cost grade +1, call to the rearguard circle, shuffle your deck, and that unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So basically, it's Time Leap on steroids, because you get the extra 10k power. Now, this isn't the most powerful grade 4 that we could use, but it's an amazingly powerful first grade 4 turn that we can go into if we went first, as next stage isn't live. And this card does have inherent synergies with some other cards, because we can use the grade 2 Zeit to discard a Ribble to then call her to the field, so we have 5 attacks. As we can attack with the rearguards, then do that play and have 2 more standing units. Now we have another promo that isn't confirmed for the English format, that is a unit that on plays can time leap a unit as well, so we can use that card to then also enable that 5th attack, which in my opinion is way better than the grade 2 Zeit, as it enables that 5th attack on its own. So there's even more plays in that aspect. So Time Leaper Dragon is pretty good. And for that, I think it's a solid 4-star card. Like, it's not an amazing ultimate boss unit like Next Stage is in that extent, but it's really good as a generic card that can be utilized in any playstyle, and it's a great going first grade 4 to go into, as it's not restricted around whatever grade your opponent is, or whatever damage you have, or whatever those type of restrictions exist. So for that, it's a really nice card for Gear Chronicle, and the more and more I see it, and the more and more I play it, the more and more I like it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one. Now we get to the 10th clan, which is of course Granblue, and we start off with their draw PG, which is Gus Jin. And of course, it's going to be a 5-star reprint. Now for their second reprint, they've got the grade 1 Ripple Banshee, and it has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle, when placed from drop zone, cost Soulless 1, draw a card, and this unit gets power plus 4k until the end of turn. This for me is a solid 5-star reprint, as it was an original older Tripar, and it's a very good generic card that's almost seen as a staple for Granblue, as you can really utilize the soul, and the draw is also pretty damn good. So overall for me, it's a really good reprint. But then as we go up the grade and we see the grade 2 reprint, we see Greed Shade. And for anybody that doesn't know what Greed Shade does, it has the following abilities. Continues on Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. During your turn, if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, this unit gets power plus 5k. And it has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost, discard a card from your hand, put 2 cards from the top of your deck into the drop zone, and return a card not named Greed Shade from your drop zone to the hand. And this is obviously a 5-star reprint. This was an older Tripar, which is a clan staple. I originally gave it a 6-star rating for obvious reasons, and it now returning as a reprint in this set is so important for Granblue players, as any deck, premium or standard, is utilizing this card to some extent, so this is really good. Now, as the 4th and final reprint, we see the Grade 3 Dragon Undead Skull Dragon. And for anybody, again, that doesn't know what this card does, it has the ability to continuous from hand. This card cannot be normal called. And it also has continuous of Vanguard Irregular Circle. During your turn, this unit gets power plus 2k for each card in your drop zone. And it also has Auto Irregular Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, retire this unit. This is once again for me a 5-star reprint because this is also a clan staple, as it's the big pushing power behind Granblue, and for premium players this is a must 4-off basically. The whole Granblue Megiddo OTK build centers around Skull Dragon being a thing, so it getting a reprint now is really good. But if we take a look at our new cards, we can see this lovely Grade 1, which is Damien the Ghosty, and it has the abilities Auto Vanguard Irregular Circle. When placed from hand, search your deck for up to 1 card with Ghosty in its card name, put it into your drop zone, and shuffle your deck. So this is basically filtering for the Ghosty archetype, which is really good because there are really good Ghosty cards that you want to have in the drop zone that work with the synergy of this playstyle, and it being free is also pretty nice. But it also has the ability Auto Irregular Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, if you have a Vanguard with Ghosty in its card name, cost, retire this unit, and if you did not counter charge for the ability of Damien the Ghosty this turn, counter charge 1. So it's a free counter charge that costs you this unit, but in certain playstyles you do not mind this. And this is really good for the Ghosty archetype, but you will see that once we go over their Grade 3. So for me, this is a solid 4-star card. Like, the first ability is really good generically, and the second ability is really good for the Ghosty archetype. It's slightly on a generic ability, but you cannot have everything. Now, if we take a look at the Grade 2 Ghosty, we see Jesse the Ghosty. And it has the abilities Act from Drop Zone, cost, retire 2 rearguards not named Jesse the Ghosty, and call this card to the rearguard circle. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. And it has the ability Auto rearguard circle. When it attacks, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of that battle. At the end of the battle, retire this unit, and if you did not counter charge from the ability of Jesse the Ghosty this turn, counter charge 1. So this, unlike the Grade 1, is completely generic. You're not dependent on what type of archetype you're playing, so you have really solid counter charge engine going on here, and this does synergize with Nitros to some extent, as you do not lose any value about Nitros retiring your stuff and this card retiring itself, because you can basically get the best of both worlds. And for that, I think it's a solid 4-star card. Like, it recurring itself as a counter charge engine is really nice. It's a 14k beater for that attack, and it had some really good synergies with the Grade 3 that we're gonna tackle right now. Because that Grade 3 is Ghosty Leader Beatrice. And Beatrice has the abilities Auto Vanguard Irregular Circle. When placed, cost Soul Best 1 and call a card not named Ghosty Leader Beatrice from drop zone to the rearguard circle. This already is a really good skill because this synergizes with Nitros to potentially enable 5 attacks, just like Colombard or Captain Nightmist or any other card that allows you to superior call on place. In this case, it costs a Soul Blast, which is arguably a lot better than Colombard costing a Counter Blast or Captain Nightmist, so that opens up some really nice synergy plays with Nitros. But it's also a really good generic card, as well as a good boss unit, because it also has the skills Continuous Vanguard Circle. All of your units with Ghosty in their card names on your rearguard circle or Guardian Circle get Intercept and Power plus 5k and Shield plus 5k. So that means our Ghosties are stronger and they become really good interceptors as well, or just you can guard them from hand or from your drop zone potentially, as there are Ghosties that call themselves immediately to the Guardian Circle. So this synergizes with that entire play and potentially wants you to play with Protect too because of this inherent ability. But all comes together once we take a look at her third ability, because her third ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. When your rearguard is retired by a card's ability during your turn, cost Counter plus 1 and call a card with Ghosty in its card name and grade less than the grade of the retired unit from your drop zone to the rearguard circle. So this allows you to multi-attack in a time leap fashion, but better said, in a reverse time leap. Because if your grade 3 gets retired, you can call a grade 2 Ghosty. If your grade 2 gets retired, you can call a grade 1 Ghosty, etc, etc. And Granblue does what it does best, and it can retire its own units as the best clan out there. Because we have Skull Dragon and Ghost Ship that retired himself, and now we have the Grade 2 and the Grade 1 Ghosty that also retired himself. So basically, what this card allows you to do is go from a Grade 3 to a Grade 2 to a Grade 1 and to a Grade 0 for extra attacks. And it's seen as the Grade 2 and the Grade 1 countercharge you once per turn. You can actually do that almost for free and generate those extra attacks. And as seen as Beatrice allows you to superior call from the drop, you can superior call that Skull Dragon that you discarded in the early game. And you end up on a Grade 0, which can be your heal trigger, as that's a Ghosty. And as seen as now all our Ghosty have intercept and increased shield value, and you potentially use Protect too, that intercepting heal trigger can potentially be around the 35 plus K shield for one card that comes off the back foot of multi-attacks that hit for sizable numbers. So Beatrice for me is a solid 5-star card. It works in generic plays with her first ability, but the rest of her skills make the Ghosty archetype a really solid low budget playstyle that's really good. And with Ghosty out of the way, we dive into the 11th clan for Clan Selection Plus Vol.1, that is Megacolony. And we start off with her draw PG, which is Paralyzed Madonna, and of course it's a obvious 5-star. Now for their second reprint, we see the reprint of Stealth Millipede, which has the ability to continue a rearguard circle. If this unit is rest, all of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as this unit cannot stand. And then it has the ability auto rearguard circle when an attack or the attack it boosted hits. Put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. So effectively it either shuts down an entire column or it gives you soul and counterblast. Which, either way, are really powerful cards. And this was a really expensive promo, and it's really good to see this card finally getting an accessible variant of the card. So this is, for me, a solid 5-star reprint. You might not use it in every build, because some Megacolony decks can play without it, but it's definitely not a bad thing to have your hands on. Now, as for the third reprint, we have Small Captain Butterfly Officer, which has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost rest this unit, choose up to one of your other rearguards, and it gets power plus 10k. If you chose, at the end of the turn, put the unit into your soul and countercharge 1. For me, this is going to be a 1-star reprint because it wasn't originally on old common, and it's still super accessible. So I don't really see the benefit of actually reprinting this card. Yes, you have a triple R foiling, but that's about it. Now for the final reprint for Megacolony, we see Machining Mantis, which has the ability Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost counterblast 1. Look at the 6 cards from top of your deck, reveal up to one Grade 3 card from among them, put them into your hand, shuffle your deck, and this unit gets power plus 6k until the end of turn. Now for me, this is a solid 5-star reprint because this is a staple for the clan, as well as the Grade 1 variant, sadly that didn't get a reprint, but luckily at least the Grade 2 did. So this is a really good reprint that the clan needed because it was quite an expensive card to get your hands on. Now as for the new cards, we have the Grade 1 Mutant Gentleman High Class Moth, which has the abilities Continuous in Deck and Soul. It is regarded as a Grade 3. This is really good because Megacolony is one of those Protect clans that needs to soul as Grade 3s to get access to their powerful skills. So having a card like this is incredibly good, but it also being a Grade 3 in deck is really good with synergies between him or it and Gradora. So another really nice bonus. But then we get to this other effect, which is Act on Rearguard Circle. Cost, rest this unit and put a normal unit from your drop zone on the bottom of your deck. Countercharge 1. Choose one of your opponent's rearguards, and that unit cannot intercept until the end of turn. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. The intercept blocking is a nice addition, but the main important thing about this card is that it allows you to put a normal unit on the bottom of your deck, which are supposed to be your Grade 3s with Gradora in mind, and it gives you a countercharge engine on demand for every single turn. This is a solid 5-star card for me. This is probably the easiest countercharge engine for Megacolony, and it synergizes so perfectly with things like Gradora and whatever other things Megacolony tries to do. So it's a really nice card. But on top of that, we also got a brand new Grade 3, which is Pincer Attack Mutant Intrude Scissors. And it has the abilities Auto from Drop Zone. At the end of the battle, your Grade 3 or greater Vanguard attacked. If a new card was put into your opponent's damage zone this turn, cost counterblast 1 and call this card to the rearguard circle. So effectively this is a multi-attack enabler as it allows you to generate a 4th attack. But then we have the other ability, which is Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed, costs Soul Blast 1. Choose one of your rear guards, stand it, and this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So not only can this allow you to enable 4 attacks, it can actually allow you to enable 5 attacks, and then he himself becomes a 22k beater. That's really good because it's generic and it doesn't really mind what type of deck you play. Now, obviously, you won't get the multi-attack if you're in a normal deck and your opponent's at 5 damage, because you need to deal your opponent damage to facilitate this ability. But that's where the new Grade 3 comes into play. So, generically, it's already a pretty decent card, but in contrast of the new playstyle, this is for me an obvious 5-star card, as it's really, really good, and it's another nice tool for Ghidorah to work with, because even Ghidorah can utilize just the second ability and still enable those 5 attacks, which is ridiculous if you think about it. Now, talking about the new Grade 3, let's talk about our new boss unit, which is Worm Toxic Mutant Venom Stinger. And Venom Stinger has the abilities Auto and Vanguard Circle. When a card is put into your opponent's damage zone during your turn, this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So every time one of your attack hits, your Vanguard gains a 10k power, so basically it negates defensive triggers, which is really nice. But then we get to the interesting part, which is Auto and Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, cost counter plus 1 and put a rearguard into your soul. Until the end of the battle, even if a trigger unit is revealed for your opponent's damage check, that trigger effect does not activate. And you perform the same trigger effect as that card's trigger effect, then cost Soul Blast 1 Grade 3, choose up to 2 cards from your opponent's damage zone, put them into his or her drop zone, and deal 1 damage to your opponent's Vanguard for each card put into his or her drop zone. So I'm sorry to say, Angel Feather players, but Megacolony just did what you're supposed to do, but a lot better. Because not only does it allow you to shoot them again multiple damage, thus giving your Vanguard an extra 10k power for each damage, but you get to choose which damage they heal. So they don't get the counter charge off of it if they already have 2 cards face down or face up at least. So that's really good. But the fact that you steal the triggers of your opponent means that defensive triggers are not existing during this attack, which is ridiculous. But interesting enough, it has some really good synergies with the Grade 1 and the Grade 3 we just talked about, because what you can do is have the Grade 1 on the field and put the Grade 1 into the soul with this skill, and then immediately Soul Blast it out for the Soul Blast Grade 3 cost of the second part of this skill, thus fulfilling the entire skill, even if it was your very first Grade 3 turn. You don't have to rewrite if you have access to the Grade 1. Of course, you can also just Soul Charge a Grade 3 and then Soul Blast it. And interesting enough, if you Soul Charge the new Grade 3 and you Soul Blast it, then after the attack you can immediately call it back onto the field to have 5 attacks. So you have some really good synergy plays with this Grade 3. So for me, Venom Stinger is a solid 5-star card. Like, I like this design and I think it's a really good card. Is it super powerful? Probably not, but it opens up a lot of interesting playstyles and deck building options that you can utilize for Megacolony, so I like this card a lot. And therefore I want to just justify the 5-star rating. Now, with Megacolony out of the way, we enter the 12th and final clan for Clan Selection Plus Volume 1. And that is Nectar. And we start off with our Dropology, which is Maiden of Blossom Rain, which is of course a 5-star card. Then we get to the other reprints, and the first one that we see is Fruit Basket Elf. And it has the ability Auto and Rearguard Circle, cost Soul Blast 1 and retire this unit. Call up to 2 plant tokens to the Rearguard Circle, and if your Vanguard is a Grade 3 or greater, those plant tokens get power plus 5k until the end of turn. Now this is for me a 1-star reprint because it is a rare and it wasn't really hard to get, and it already got a reprint in a festival collection, so I don't really see the point of actually reprinting this card, and it could have just gone with an older triple R. So yeah, this is for me a wasted spot. But what isn't a wasted spot is the other reprint that we've got, which is Maiden of Nepenthes, or should I say the release of a Japanese exclusive promo to the English side. And this card is pretty good because it has abilities Auto and Vanguard the Rearguard Circle, once a turn, cost retire a plant token, draw a card, and until the end of turn, this unit gets boost and power plus 5k. So effectively, this ability alone absorbs the plant token value within this card, and then you draw a card on top of that, which is insane as it allows you to generate value of tokens throughout the entirety of the game. That's really good. And then on top of that, we also have Auto and Rearguard Circle. When it boosts a Grade 3 rearguard, you may have the boosted unit gets critical plus 1 until the end of the battle. If you do, at the end of the battle, put this unit into your soul. This just allows you to put out more pressure on your plays. This can synergize with the Asha turns with the Flower Fairy token, as you can give your rearguard Asha also inherent double critical, thus giving all your attacks inherent critical pressure. But I think this is better as just a value engine where it just absorbs all those plant tokens and you keep drawing cards and generating more power. But overall, for me, this is a solid 4-star card. Like, this is really good. It's not on the same power level as the Altmo promo or Ribble for Gear Chronicle, but it's still a really good card for Neo Nectar. Now, for the final reprint that we've got for Neo Nectar, we have Autumn's Turning Maid Rosie, and this grade 2 has the abilities Auto Rigor Circle. At the end of the battle, it attacked a Vanguard, cost Counter +1, and retire a grade 0 rearguard. Draw a card, and one of your units get power +5k until the end of turn. Now, this is basically very similar to the grade 2 that we just talked about, that her first ability, as it absorbs a plant token, it draws you the card and gives 5k power. It doesn't give you the boost, but because you give the 5k power to any other unit, you don't need the boost if you just give it to the front row attacker. Now, to me, this is a failed card, and I will give it 1 star because it's an older promo, a Bushiroad Springfest promo, so it was harder to get, but this card, I don't really see any use in Neo Nectar at all. Like, we have better cards that does what it's supposed to do, but better, like we just talked about the previous grade 2, but there are also other cards that just give you more value, and using Counterblast for this is something that I do not like at all. So, for me, this is the 1 star that you could probably just ignore for future builds. Now, let's take a look at the actual new cards for Neo Nectar, which are pretty interesting, and we start off with a grade 1, which is Maiden of Flower Carpet, and Carpet has the ability Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When placed, you may call a plant token to the rearguard circle. We've seen this time and time again, this is nothing new at all. But then we get the unique ability, which is Auto from Drop Zone. At the end of your turn, cast, retire 2 plant tokens and return this card to your hand. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. This is really good because it allows you to create infinite value to some extent, because 2 plant tokens are 10k power and 0 shield. This grade 1, if you get it back into your hand, is actually 13k power because you create that 5k plant token, or 10k shield. So it's more value than you would get. So if you can discard or guard with it in the early game, you can keep reoccurring it back to your hand turn after turn. And at the same time, by removing plant tokens from your field, you are negating against control clans like Kagero that will wipe your board anyway, so you can generate more value over time. So for that, I think it's a solid 3-star card. Like, it's not the most amazing type of card, but it is really good in certain scenarios. And therefore, I would definitely recommend trying this card out. And it's really good in the new Stan Peony build, but you will see that in a second. Now, as for the grade 2, we've got Maiden of Vol.1, which has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle when placed from hand to the rearguard circle with a plant token, draw a card, and this unit gets power +5k until the end of turn. So this is again something similar to the 2 grade 2 reprints that we've got, that it absorbs the value of the plant token as you draw a card, and you gain 5k power by removing a plant token. This is, for me, however, a 2-star card, because it's better than the other grade 2 that cost a Counterblast, as this is free, but it's definitely not on par with the other grade 2 promo card that just gives you the value turn after turn after turn, because this is just a one-time effect. You need to place it and it's done, where even the other promo card, the bad one, can give you more value over the course of a game if it stays on the board. This is just a one and done deal, which I do not like as much, but it has its place in the deck that we can create with Stan Peony. So for me, in generic sense, it's kind of underwhelming. But once we get to the main grade 3, then we see the actual value of the new Neo Nectar build. Because here we have the new grade 3, Maiden of Stan Peony. And Maiden of Stan Peony has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When placed, call up to 1 plant token to the rearguard circle. If this unit is on a Vanguard circle, call up to 2 plant tokens instead of 1. Again, very generic. We've seen this again on multiple grade 3 boss units, so this is fine. But then we get to the unique effect, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, cost Counter +1 and retire 4 rearguards. Call to 4 plant tokens to the rearguard circle, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit and all of your plant tokens get power +10k until the end of turn. So this effectively allows you to attack 5 times in a single turn if you have a full field, because you attack with your columns, then attack with your Vanguard, you turn those columns into plant tokens, which potentially are either just 10k attacks or 30k attacks, and then you have pretty massive beaters because your Vanguard also gets that extra 10k power buff. So this is really, really strong. There is only one thing that I do not like about this card, and that's the fact that it turns your board into plant tokens, which means you will lose your rear guards that probably are your power plays or your combo extenders to some extent, and that's kind of annoying, which means that turn after turn, if the game progresses into multiple turns, you need to draw again into those cards to gain value. Now this is where the grade 2 that we just talked about comes into play. It's having an on-plays effect is actually beneficial to this deck because you don't mind losing the card because it already did its job. But the grade 2 promo card that we finally got is a different story. We do not want to lose that card, we want to keep it onto the board. So it being behind your Vanguard as a booster is actually pretty good because your booster, you can keep it there and then turn after turn allow to absorb the value of those plant tokens you can keep generating over the course of a game, and you can keep gaining more value. But another card that really works with this card is the grade 1 that can resurrect itself in a drop zone. Because it's being replaced by a plant token, you do not mind that because at the end of turn you can sacrifice those 2 plant tokens and it gets back into your hand. And the next turn you can call to the board, create another token, and it can then sacrifice itself again for Stand Peony to create more plant tokens. And thus gaining that value engine over the course of multiple turns. But without those cards, this ability can be annoying if you lose your important key pieces. So it depends on your playstyle and how your deck is built that this ability might hurt you or you do not really care. So for me, this is going to be a solid 4-star card because it's really powerful. You get 5 attacks, but you need to have the correct cards in your hand or on the board that you do not mind losing them. And it's also important what grade your opponent is, because if you do this while your opponent isn't grade 3, yeah, getting 10k columns at the second attack, yeah, it doesn't really do anything. You need the force markers to actually hit for decent numbers, and then still one defensive trigger will stop the attack. So it's basically a going second deck if I'm gonna be very honest, but depending on your playstyle or how you build a deck, that can completely differ. But for me, it's going to be a solid 4-star card. And with that, we covered all the cards for Clan Selection Plus Volume 1. If I'm correct, this should be around 1.5 or 2 hour video. And you might have seen that the camera feed or the video itself had some jump cuts with the background or how the camera is positioned. And that has to do with the fact that I couldn't record this in one session. I had to stop midway through a couple of times to give my voice at least a couple of minutes to recover because this is not good for my voice. I'm dying over here. And we're gonna do this again tomorrow for Clan Selection Plus Volume 2, so yay, rip me! But with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new cards. Are you excited for certain decks? Have you already playtested certain cards? And also, do you agree with my ratings? Do you think I overlooked certain cards, or do you think I overvalued certain cards? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And also, don't forget, you can order these single cards over at Parkage and use the discount code TIMELEAP5 for 5% discount on your entire order to get your cards even cheaper than normal. But with that said, I'm gonna give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/VangardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VangardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap, and I see you guys in the next one!